Awesome. So it sounds like now you mentioned you get involved with the offer typically right after the offer is accepted, right?
Correct. Yep.
So there's 2 points there. One, the person who's presenting the offers or preparing the offer is typically the agent. So
Yep.
you really need to have an agent who knows how to protect your interests. I hear a lot of horror stories about people writing blank check offers, and then all of a sudden they can't close for some reason, and they're in a panic. Something comes up, the property's not what they want, especially with COVID. Maybe there's a job issue that changes. So really important that you have an agent who's fairly familiar with these potential issues and knows how to negotiate on your behalf for them. That's me. Hi, I'm Jason Gell with the BOP team. And more importantly, how to get your offer accepted with those protections. I think a lot of times you hear people say, "Oh, I put the offer in through the listing agent." As an attorney, you can speak to agency and who people represent in a transaction. If a listing agent is preparing the offer for the buyer, what are their obligations? What is that person who's preparing that offer? Who are they obligated to?
Well, typically, if one agent is representing both parties, there should be a dual agent representation agreement that's being disclosed, right? But you would always want your own agent. As a buyer, I think, and shame on us for not mentioning this sooner. It should have been much sooner, actually, if not in the introduction period of this. You buyers do not pay for Jason. The seller would. The sellers pay for both agents in the transaction. Yeah. So essentially, it's always in your best interest as a buyer to have your own agent and separate from the listing agent. But because, of course, a listing agent who is listing a property for a seller are always going to be biased, and they're going to be looking for offers that benefit their sellers, a quick closing date, whatever the case might be. But again, the importance of having a strong team is knowing the market and knowing what situation the buyers are in. For example, you want to have a mortgage contingency, you want to have an inspection contingency, a pest contingency, or whatever it might be that suits your needs and apprehensions with a particular property. So those things are satisfied with these contingencies in order for you to feel comfortable moving forward, right? Yeah. But I want to preface this too, but Jason, by being a president of his group, I mean, don't you think the guy knows a bunch of agents in the area where he can be like, hey, look, this is a really strong buyer. This is a great couple. They have this going on. And by him having these real life experiences, it gives you a benefit of using someone like Jason, who has experience and knows a lot of agents to kind of have maybe these side conversations in order when he's submitting an offer on your behalf.
So I appreciate you saying that. And 1000%, I have had offers accepted because I was the agent on the other side of the transaction. That is documented. 100% has happened because the listing agent, when I was representing the buyer, knew that my buyer was going to close. It was going to be a smooth transaction because of the relationships we've developed through the Realtor Association, through the different companies I'm affiliated with over the year, just the interpersonal relationship. So I appreciate you saying that. What I did want to mention on agency, because you touched on it with dual agency, you mentioned disclosed dual agency. And that's a really important concept. When you walk into, and I want you to interrupt me wherever, but agency is something I have to be pretty well versed in. It's one of our sort of core concepts that we have to educate the consumer on. Agency is my relationship with the buyer, my relationship with the seller. And or we call it the consumer. And when you go into disclosed dual agency, you have to sign something. You have to, it can't be a verbal agreement. And the reason is it's protection for you as the buyer. Sometimes people think they're in a dual agency position, but they didn't sign anything, so they're really not. However, if they were misled into that position, they might have a claim. It gets really muddy if you have one agent who's sort of acting in that dual agency capacity. The other thing that's really important is if your only face-to-face interaction with that listing agent was at an open house, there is a presumption that they represent the seller and the seller's interests only. That's a really important thing. If you don't see them again face to face, there's no mandate, there's no legal requirement. And Leo, feel free to correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but there's no legal requirement for them to redisclose because they're not meeting you face to face. It's, you know.
Well, it's what I always say is, it's again, I'm very simple when I talk real estate and real estate transactions and business, because, you know, it's you guys as the buyers that are purchasing, and we're here to support you. If it doesn't pass the gut check, then don't go with it. You know, if it doesn't feel right, if this agent is being vague or whatever, and it's the first time you've ever met them, always have an agent of your own. It's really that simple. And George made a really good point. Say it again.
And it's free.
Yeah. So George made a really good point earlier in one of our discussions about saying, don't listen to your uncle or cousin or whatever. I can't stress that enough. Do you know how many times where there's
that's me. You, George.
Yeah. where I'm introduced to a buyer, you know, from an agent reputable like Jason, and says, hey, Leo's a real estate attorney that we've used a bunch of times, and he does a great job, and he'll protect your interests and all of the above. Oh, but someone's cousin's friend's boyfriend's ex-husband happens to be a divorce attorney who's stuck in court all day, and he can take care of this purchase and sale agreement. Well, can he? He's stuck in court all day. He doesn't really understand what's going on with the industry. Just listen to your experts. It's really that simple, and trust the people that are representing you. You don't want to miss a deadline to lose your deposit. You don't want to miss a deadline for a purchase and sale agreement. These are your life events, and this team and the three of us understand what every one of these terms and dates mean to you, and the importance of moving on with your life, and the importance of everything that you guys have going on in your lives, to make sure you close on time, and to make sure that we meet our deadlines as well for you and you know, the things that you got going on in your life.